Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Swaim Strategies, a consulting firm dedicated to nonprofit fundraising events. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Hello, and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Welcome to the new year, 2026. Before we jump in today, I want to tell you about the Elevate Conference, our fundraising event professionals, where we gather together to learn about fundraising events. We are just a couple months away. We are in the final countdown, friends. Elevate is a space where our community comes together to make planning successful events not just possible, but easier. So mark your calendars, March 3rd and 4th, 2026. We are gathering at Avenue in Portland, Oregon. And if you can't join us in Portland, you can attend virtually because we are hybrid. So we hope it's already on your calendar. We'll walk away with practical tools, real strategies to strengthen your storytelling and deepen donor connections. This is intended to really be an experience where you walk away with things that you can apply right away to your fundraising events. We also have an incredible slate of speakers that we have who are joining us at Elevate this year to really help you take fundraising to the next level. So go to Swaim Strategies and join us at Elevate. But speaking of Elevate, we met the Feathr team last year at Elevate and have fallen in love with the support that they are providing to the nonprofit sector. Feathr is a sponsor of both the Fundraising Elevator and the Elevate Conference, and we are Feathr users because it is a platform that has been a game changer for marketing and communication needs, especially in the nonprofit sector. So today we have the co-founder joining us. Aleksander Levental is laser focused on supporting you in growing your audience, increasing your revenue, and building relationships, all words we love. He is an innovator with a passion for both data and people, our favorite kind of innovator, with a deep expertise in digital media, AI-powered marketing, and nonprofit solutions. Alex, welcome to the show. We're so glad you're here.
I'm both very happy to be here and quite excited to be here. Thank you for that introduction.
Well, I want to know first a little bit about you and Feathr. So tell us a little bit just about why you founded Feathr.
Ooh, that's an interesting question. The actual the full story about that and the full honest answer is a little bit meandering, but I think I can summarize by saying there's kind of like two foundings of Feathr, and there was maturation and evolution of the mission and the cause of Feathr along that process. The very first reason for founding Feathr, myself and my co-founder Aiden, was pure blind competitiveness and greed.
I appreciate your honesty.
Unfocused, poorly understood. Just we wanted to do a startup. We were both in. I think I was in my last year of university at UF. Go Gators. And Aiden, I think, was in his junior year, and we kind of both coincidentally, through various reasons in our lives, wanted for more competition and wanted for a sort of bigger stage of competition and potential success. And then over the course of a few years, Feathr kind of found its way to what our core mission, what our core product, what our core sort of offering now is, which is marketing and fundraising for nonprofits. And what's interesting is that initial kind of feeling of desire for competition, for growth, for success has stayed a kind of component of the founding of Feathr, but now we feel it on behalf of nonprofits.
Yeah.
So sort of the reason for the evolution of Feathr into what it is now is to kind of convey that sense of desire for competition, desire for growth, desire to win, and enable nonprofits to do that. I think once we started to there's a very long story about how we kind of meandered our way into the nonprofit space, and particularly marketing and digital marketing technology for nonprofits. But ultimately, I think what we recognized was this combination of the idea that, man, like nonprofits are the coolest organizations that exist. And yet, by virtue of a lot of systemic, endemic reasons, the most restrained in their internal competition and kind of external permission to grow and compete, and also tooling and software and services that assist with those. So yeah, then my kind of summary answer is the founding of Feathr has become the desire to help nonprofits win, to compete, to grow, and to give them the tools and the services to be able to do that.
I love that. So I'm sure this is not news to you, but marketing and specifically digital marketing can feel like dirty words in the nonprofit world. Help us understand this attention economy we're living in and why marketing matters.
Yeah, it's certainly not news to us. Very, very much not a novel idea. Is probably the fundamental challenge that
Yeah.
Feathr faces is this sort of like internal attitude. I'll say both extrinsic and intrinsic. Um, I think the last time we spoke that I mentioned that I'm an ardent fan of Uncharitable by Dan Pallotta. Actually, I don't
Yep.
know that I've said his
Pelota.
name out. Pallotta. Okay. He should have a name for like his like the Beyonce has the Beehive.
Uh-huh.
It should be like the people who are in the palanquin or something. But this notion that that is expressed in Uncharitable, that nonprofits are kind of restrained from competing, from existing in the way other organizations are. I think that language of the attention economy that we're in is a part of this idea about helping nonprofits compete and win and succeed, is that whether nonprofits recognize it or not, whether they're comfortable with the idea or not, whether they think marketing is a dirty word or not, the reality is they are competing for attention against any and every brand or distraction that you can think of. And I think
Yeah.
this I empathize with the reason for this, but fundamentally disagree with the conclusion, which is why Feathr is what it is and why we're pursuing what we're pursuing, is that nonprofits are in competition with the NFL, with Coca-Cola, with Apple, with Nike, because ultimately you're trying to talk to human beings about how they're going to spend their resources, their time, their attention, their money. And you can kind of put yourself on the sideline and say, oh, this ecosystem of marketing, of branding, of communication, of storytelling, of digital marketing, well, that's not for me because I'm a nonprofit, right? You don't sell your mission.
Yep.
That's a little bit icky, or we don't do marketing. You're welcome to say that, but it just doesn't reflect the reality that you're still talking to human beings who only have 24 hours in the day, hopefully 8 of which that they're asleep, and they're otherwise inundated with information from all of these brands that we talked about.
Yeah.
And so you have to compete. You are competing. I think it's Tom Sawyer, the Rush song. There's a line in that song where he says, "If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice."
Right. Yeah.
And I have that feeling in the back of my head a lot when thinking about kind of nonprofits in this perspective, is that you sort of recognize like you can choose not to compete in marketing, but you still have made a choice, and you're basically kind of surrendering yourself to being 10th, 11th, 12th, 20th on the totem pole of attention for people.
Yeah, inaction is actually action.
Right.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right. Yes.
Well,
Yes.
and I think I just heard some nonprofit heads explode, because I think there's a want to create a firewall between mission-based work in the nonprofit
Right.
sector and commerce, right?
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about the fact that your story is out there in vying for attention, not only with the stories of other nonprofits for
Right.
donor attention, but you're trying to get your donors' attention. And we have to think about what donors are doing in their day. They have shoes following them around the
Right.
internet to purchase them.
Right.
They have, TikTok videos coming across. They're, in addition to feeding family, whatever their algorithm is for the day, in what that actually looks like. And so I think continuing to hold in front of nonprofits the idea that there is more than just nonprofits vying for each other's attention for
Yeah.
donors, and I think that could be a revolutionary / challenging concept for folks to think about, that whether they want it or not, marketing is happening, and where are they in it?
And yet, I think we sit at this interesting juncture right now, and I think Alex, you're poised to sort of be this catalyst
Yeah.
in this moment because the clock just turned, new tax laws in effect. We're living in a post publicly funded world where federal funding has faded. And organizations are looking for the gap filler, right? They're looking probably from more of a place of a little concern, but like, where do we go from here? And the thing that I'm seeing is that people who are venturing into this space of here's our work, here's our story, and we're going to get it out there unapologetically are filling that gap.
Right.
So I think that, you know, when I think about digital marketing, I immediately think of like a tech deck and all these tools and resources I need to invest in and accounts I need to set up. And you all are that. Like you are a all in one package, right? Like to be able to say, yeah, I need this to be my email. I need this to be my advertising platform. I need this to be able to track how people are engaging with my content. So I'm curious because I think for those who maybe haven't thought about marketing or have thought it's a dirty word and are thinking, okay, wait, maybe if we were to sort of wrap our brain around this idea of like post government funding, we need to be more in present awareness of the public eye. What is digital marketing that isn't their social media feed that they post on every day? Because that
Yeah.
is new to some people.
Yep.
Yeah, that's I think a very appropriate question. Particularly given the context you described, is that there are a lot of organizations, a lot of nonprofits who really have just kind of flipped over this reality of, for decades and decades and decades, they sort of viewed their fundamental job as, well, I have a mission that I really believe in. I'm a food bank, or I'm a climate nonprofit, or a medical research organization, advocacy, whatever it is. And I really believe in that work, and I really believe in that community, and I really believe in that audience. And because there exists this ecosystem of, whether it's grants or federal funding programs, who those institutions, you have this kind of sense, or like, well, they're kind of pre-programmed to interface with me in the language that I want, right? I'm going to write a grant proposal. I can kind of talk to them about in this technical set of ways, and sort of very, very literal set of ways. And there's obviously a lot of politics about grant writing and how all of that stuff works, right? But there's at least your sort of perspective as a nonprofit professional, 2 to 3 weeks ago, and then into the decades beyond that, was I didn't have to think about marketing myself, right? I just described myself to the small number of people, or in moments, that would evaluate me on the merits of my mission and the impact of that mission, and how efficient or effective that I am at that. And then you get this kind of, obviously, entire revolution of digital marketing that happens in the background of this. And I think, or at least empathizable, understandable, that a lot of nonprofits sort of adopted, like, yeah, we don't really do this, but occasionally what this means for us is we just post on social media, right? That's our kind of digital presence. So we post on social media, we have a website. I mean, maybe some people view their emails as a part of their digital marketing, or they just kind of view their emails as part of their communications function. The reality that they exist in now, that so many exist in now, right, in this kind of post, as you said, publicly funded world, is digital marketing. There's a clinical answer, right? I could sort of give you the textbook answer: is marketing in general is the set of activities, actions, initiatives that an organization undertakes, let's say for a nonprofit, to acquire, engage with, and retain donors, right? So this is like nice, kind of plain, bland, doesn't really say anything. In practice, though, what it sort of actually means, that I think to the audience of people who are listening to this, that's different than what they expect, is digital marketing is what Feathr does, what any other profit-driven organization does to try and grow, right? It's all of the tactics, all of the tools, all of the technologies that we deploy to give ourselves every possible advantage to grow as quickly as possible. And so social media presence, both paid, earned, organic, is a part of that. But if your fundamental drive, right, as I can quite relate to, if your fundamental drive is to grow as quickly as possible, you're also going to say, well, I want to post on social media. I also want to know who's coming to where from which social media, right? I want to know which parts of my website are they going to, and are they coming from Facebook? Are they coming from TikTok? Are they coming from Twitter? I'm going to go to my grave calling it Twitter. I don't think I'm ever going to say
Same.
And then what are the sort of conversion flows and funnels of those groups? And then to what messages are they reacting, responding to? And then as they become a part of my marketing funnel, right? What messages, what ads, what copy, has what kind of differential performance. And then even as they sort of complete that first action, right? That first donation or volunteer sign up or whatever it is that you're trying to drive them towards, how do I then convey and carry that data with that person and the sort of group of people who are similar to them to do that follow-up action, that kind of follow-up communication? And so in some sense, social media is a part of digital marketing, right? It's your digital presence that you're using to this. But the gap is, are you doing 1/100th of everything that you can do to acquire as many donors as possible, to be as visible, to have your mission and your organization as visible as possible? Are you trying to give yourself every piece of data and information out of that, whether it's social media post or email or digital ad? And so then digital marketing it's that entire activity. It's the consumption of that data. It's the segmentation of that data. It's the differential communication, who gets which message. It's the measurement of how effective, efficient, performant are those messages. It's the sort of the holding on to that data for the next follow-up action or ask. Like, one of the most effective, kind of highest return, highest value, most useful set of digital marketing actions that our customers do is this idea of kind of post-donation follow-up and follow-through. It's one that I personally feel insanely passionately about as a donor. And when I'm talking to nonprofits about this, right, like I donate to a food bank. It's a huge emotional letdown for me if I don't hear from that food bank until a year later when they ask me again, right? Because this is not a commercial transaction for me. It's an emotional transaction. It's I care about my community. I believe in the idea that people should be fed. I'm happy to participate it when the kind of the message or the ask comes to me. And I want the emotional gratification of that kind of 3-month follow-up, right? And that 3-month follow-up might not have an ask in it yet. It might just be, here's how many people we've fed in the last 3 months, thanks to you and other donors, donations, and some pictures and some whatever, right? And then there's a 6-month follow-up, and that 6-month follow-up might then have an additional ask in it, or announcement of an event, or volunteer sign up, or some other request. And that all kind of leads to this sort of cascade of communication that gives me what I tried to buy on Giving Tuesday or whatever that day was. What I tried to buy was the emotional satisfaction of the participation in that experience. And so that's all of that is digital marketing, right? It's how your nonprofit is perceived and experienced, in the digital world, which is, like, for all intents and purposes, the only world we all live in now.
I think more heads just exploded. I think it is potentially very helpful for folks at times to think about the idea of donors buying something.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not language we use in the sector, but in fact, that's a piece of what's driving behavior. I think the other thing that may also be making some heads explode, it has mine lately, is the idea that social media is digital marketing, and that's all you're doing. I got a ping saying, your post is doing so amazing compared to like all your other posts. And I was like, oh, this is it. I finally cracked the code. I click that thing open. It's like, you reached 11 people. 11. So here I am busting my ass, social media all day, every day, just, form and function. And 11. I reached 11 people on that post. So I think encouraging people to crack open that door and thinking of a bigger ecosystem. I think a piece of that is the stories that organizations tell. And often organizations think and assume that donors and the community at large know what they do.
Yeah, it's true.
and they skip the step of actually sharing their story before getting to purchase/donate. Yet we find that sharing stories is what builds trust and ultimately revenue. How do you find a story that generates funds?
Ooh, that's a good question. I really like that the sort of last two words, generate funds, because I think the starting point of any answer to that question has to be empathy for or recognition of, definition of, and empathy for the specific audience you're talking to, right? Because you generate funds, we generate funds in various ways, right? There's corporate giving, there's foundational giving, there's kind of one-time high large gift giving, and there's kind of recurring small gift, kind of broad marketing based donation. And so the very first thing from my perspective, experience, again, my kind of unapologetic belief, is the acknowledgement that those are different groups, different people with different wants as human beings, and they want and need different kinds of stories, right?
Yep.
The story that you tell to a corporate donor, to a foundation, and that sort of relationship, again, that kind of commercial relationship or that transaction is fundamentally different than that of one with a consumer, right? I mean, feels immediately translatable to me, to my experience at Feathr. Feathr is a venture growth equity backed startup. I kind of have forgotten how much money we've raised. It's in the tens of millions of dollars. And there's so much storytelling involved in finding investors and getting them to believe in and invest in your company.
Yeah.
And when I talk to entrepreneurs now, I mean, so often I'm having just another version of this exact same conversation, is this kind of recognition that, like, forget the rules of the game about what that organization is, what their supposed, business model is. It's like you're in front of a person.
Yep.
That person wants to feel something, wants to hear something. You should, before you think about what you're saying to them, you should really try and sit in their seat and be like, what would I want to hear? What would I want to feel from, a kind of startup pitch or a company pitch? So that's my first answer, is in finding a story that generates funds, is recognition of who you are trying to generate funds from, and crafting your story to that audience. And so empathy with their particular their particular context. What immediately stands out to me, where this is probably coming from in my brain, is the probably the most recent nonprofit fundraising book that I've read, Fundable and Findable by Kevin Brown. I'm quite certain that there's in one of those sections, he kind of goes through this idea of personas for these various groups and kind of how to build empathy for each of these actions. I mean, I think there are a lot of sort of storytelling frameworks that can walk you through, if you're asking like a tactical question of, like, literally what are the questions that I ask for how to build a story that resonates with people. So I would recommend you do that, right? If depending on who's listening and what their level of sophistication is with this, you can find Fundable and Findable. You can or just sort of look up storytelling framework. They all kind of run you through basically the same set of exercises. But there are some characteristics, some traits of those stories that, again, I think nonprofits tend to lose sight of, that are going to be sort of universally true, right? Simple is better than complicated. I think of a habit that a lot of people have. This is not just true in the nonprofit space, but that a lot of people have, is they feel this burden of, I have my special little flower, I have my special little baby, right? And it has so much texture and so much tapestry of beauty and complexity in it. And when I'm describing to somebody my baby, my flower, my nonprofit, I have to tell you every single thing about it, right?
Yes.
Because that's how I'm doing, like, that's how I'm giving it a fair shake. That's how I'm fulfilling my responsibility. Instead of, again, taking a step back, having an objective perspective, which is your primary goal when you're telling somebody a story is to get them to the next step, right? you should always be thinking about when you are storytelling, right? It's every chapter of a book cannot contain the whole book
Yes.
inside
Right.
of it, right?
Yes.
It has to be cohesive, and you kind of have to start thinking about my story in the social media post is not really quickly. Can I say every single thing that happened? My story in the social media post is enough to get me to click the link. It's enough to get me to the next chapter, whatever that is. Maybe there's a video at the end of that. Maybe there's a website, a landing page, some more sort of description. So simple, concise, I would say, uh, emotionally resonant is a very important part of effective storytelling. It's not about describing you're not writing a grant proposal
Right.
really
Right.
quickly for somebody,
Say that
when
again. It is not a grant proposal.
yeah. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get them to feel, you're trying to get them to care about whatever it is that you're describing. Bold is better than incremental. This is, I think, also something that is so easy for people to lose sight of, because when you are in the day to day of working at a nonprofit, and I shouldn't, I should be careful of stolen valor. I sit on the board of a nonprofit. I've obviously, talked to a bunch and done my best to try and help. I don't think I get to claim that I have worked at a nonprofit because it is incredibly difficult, challenging work. But when you are in that job, I think there is a tendency to feel the incrementalism of your work so consistently, so frequently, that when you leave that seat, right, you leave the seat of feeding the next person, clothing the next person, cleaning up that next river, that it's hard for you to zoom out and really sort of empathize objectively with the idea that the person that you're speaking to, that you're trying to get to believe in the story, they want the whole story. They want the whole picture. They want the big, bold vision, right? They want to believe that everyone in the world should be fed. They want to believe that healthcare is an abundant human right, right?
Yeah.
What they don't, right, what's so much more difficult to attach to is that kind of incremental, well, hey, this will help us do this very next thing. It's true, it's certainly true, but that's not your job. Your job is to get people on the hook. So bold, better than incremental. You always have to kind of put yourself in those storytelling shoes, and recognize the most impactful people, the people who kind of like hearing stories from the most, are constantly painting a big vision, a bold vision for us, rather than that kind of just one next incremental step of like, hey, fund this. Hey, this will help us build a bathroom inside of our school. While true, that's not what the story is.
Yeah.
You tapped into two pieces I want to unpack a little bit, though, because one, I think what you're talking about with the bold story is often what we call the why, right?
Yep.
The belief of the organization. Tapping into that sort of core incremental, why do we exist? What is the big picture we are solving? Is the first story, right? Like that's what allows people to tap into that decision-making part of their brain and then go on the journey with you. If you're just talking about the bathroom in the school, you're not talking about the bigger why, and therefore you're not bringing your audience in right away. But the second thing is that I think one of the big things you're talking about is story listening. And we talk a lot about their storytelling and their story listening. And I think story listening in the nonprofit sector really is a matter of, for a fundraiser, is a matter of listening to our donors, their interest, their investment. That idea of audience segmentation comes up for every communication we send out. But the thing I love about Feathr when we very first started working within it is that I noticed that the audience was self-segmenting. And it allowed me to listen to my audience in a way that I'd always seen digital media as outbound, right? Like I'm just casting a net. And what I was able to do was actually like catch in that net that there are people clicking and going to the volunteer page, that now I can give them volunteer information, and going to the donor page and now I can give them donor information, and going to our program page and now I can feed them program information. So that idea of audience segmentation almost was self-actualizing because Feathr is tracking breadcrumbs, right? Like tracing patterns.
Yep.
So to me, the idea of storytelling got more refined when I could actually listen and see where people were invested and interested in engaging with us. So that was my sort of aha when we first started engaging with Feathr was, oh my gosh, I can see so much more of my audience's interest.
I think that's an interesting comment, and obviously is kind of like reaffirming and heartwarming for me to hear, because a lot of the principles that sort of we apply to building and enhancing and improving Feathr is to say, obviously we look at, our own marketing motion. We look at the stuff that we understand. We don't have to apologize being inside of a profit-driven organization for doing all the stuff that we do to acquire more customers, to grow more quickly, to generate more revenue. And so what we look at is what are the tools, what's the data that we use that we can make sort of like we can allow our customers to take for granted, by knowing that we just work with nonprofits, right? We can kind of specialize in what kinds of stuff does our tool do automatically, then what kind of data does it surface automatically, in which ways. That will be kind of resonant, poignant, useful for nonprofits. The thing that you mentioned about automatically collecting all of those breadcrumbs and automatically sorting and segmenting on those is one of those examples of that is an activity that we do, right, quite manually at Feathr, and we use our own tooling and our own kind of technology to say, like, we have this data, we have this signal, we have these profiles, combine them. But inside of Feathr, on behalf of our customers, we have this kind of you have this construction where, like, we know who you are, we know more or less what you're trying to do, and so if you put our pixel on your website, we're just going to track all of these things automatically, and we're going to surface them for you in this way because we know that's what you should be doing. And we're trying to close this gap for you of the amount of additional steps that a nonprofit has to take in order to act, execute, and behave more like a for-profit company.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we all think the story we're telling is amazing and everyone is listening to it and acting on its behalf. And it becomes an enhancement when data is showing you what's hitting, what's not hitting, how it's hitting. And I think it's helpful to have that mirror, because I think, to your point of bold is better than incremental, when you're in incremental work about cleaning the next river or feeding the next family, it becomes like, well, yeah, this matters to everyone. And that story may have resonance for some people, but it's good for you to know that.
Yeah.
And it's good for you to know that, okay, that 3%, we've got them locked on this kind of story.
Right.
But that's leaving this 97% of people that you're like, why aren't people giving? Well, how do we put another story in front of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to dive more into how these tools can be applied. Because I think, Alex, what you just said is so important about helping nonprofits behave more like for-profit entities. And that is something that I think is a requirement now in this sector. So we'll be right back.
Ready for your hard work to yield more funds at your next event? Join us at Elevate, a nonprofit fundraising event conference designed to bring our community together and make planning successful events easier. Register today for this hybrid conference on March 3rd and 4th, 2026 in Portland, Oregon, or join us online from anywhere. This isn't just another conference. You'll walk away with battle-tested strategies, hands-on tools, and proven templates that top fundraisers use to raise millions. Your mission deserves fully funded success. Register today at swaimstrategies.com.
Welcome back. We're here with Alex Levental, co-founder and CEO of Feathr, talking about digital marketing strategies for nonprofits. Digital marketing strategies for nonprofits. It's going to happen.
It will.
Before the break, we were talking about story. Alex, how do you recommend, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but how do folks avoid the story that is simply lists of programs, that everything we do, kitchen sink sort of spray that I think nonprofits have felt compelled to do as we enter into a new space where people are thinking about funding differently and how they're talking to donors, hopefully. How do they find compelling stories, or what are compelling stories in digital marketing for them to connect to people?
I'm going to answer that, I think, from sort of the other side of the
Great.
equation, because in the way that we've talked about unapologetically selling our mission and our vision, although I sort of tend to do my best to say, here are these kind of generic principles that Feathr believes in, that I believe in, there is a component of the reality of my life that I think Feathr lives out my answers to these questions. And so I'm going to frame some of my answers, my answer to this question kind of through the way that Feathr enables this. And I think
Great.
Sam even referenced this dynamic a little bit, which is specificity in storytelling. The confidence to do that, I think, comes from confidence in the recipient, the segment of a particular message, right? If the best thing that you can do in whatever tool you're using for marketing, for communication, for et cetera, is, well, I got current donors, or I got lapsed donors, or I got everyone, then it's very hard to then sit there and be like, what's the story that resonates with either 100% of my audience, or 50% of my audience, or the other 50% of my audience, right? And so I think a lot of that anxiety, insecurity, or just that kind of feeling of being frozen in how do I find a story that's not just, well, let me list out everything and hope I find something that that resonates with someone, comes from specificity in the message. And so my guidance with that would be, start the other way. What is the data that I have access to? What's the segment that I have access to? You know, as Sam referenced, right? Like, people who are going to my volunteer sets of pages, people who are going to my donation sets of pages, people who are going to my program sets of pages. If you use Feathr, if you have Feathr, if you are a Feathr customer, then probably one of the products, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that I'm really proud of at Feathr. This one I built, so I'm particularly proud of it, is our little AI kind of group builder segmentation feature, which has anthropomorphized Pixel, the bird. You can talk to her and ask her questions about building a segment for you. And so you can ask these kind of human natural language questions to her, and she will build this sort of really intricate segment. And so I'll give you an example of how do you craft a story that's not the kitchen sink, but you sort of do it from the ground up based on who you're talking to. There's a nonprofit whose account I was constantly messing around with when I was building it, that is a reproductive service, kind of international reproductive services nonprofit, right? And so they raise money. I mean, they raise money all over the world, because sort of they kind of principally raise money in the West, and they use that money to deliver kind of reproductive services and healthcare services in Africa and Asia and all these other places where they might not have access to birth control or prenatal vitamins or stuff like that. And that group happens to, as a part of their function, they write these technical publications, right? So they write these kind of very detailed reports about the impact of these services in various countries, in various regions, and whatever. And so, like, one of my favorite sets of kind of prompts to build a segment around was like, hey, give me people who have read my technical publications or have shown interest in them, and have donated within the last 90 days or something like that, or invert that, and or have opened an email in the last 90 days or haven't opened an email in the last 90 days, right? You kind of craft a set of people, and then you go, hey, now I know who I'm talking to. I know I'm talking to somebody who has read my technical publications. I obviously, as the nonprofit professional, I have context on what that means. I know the content, the language, the story in there. Right. And I'm sort of defining it by like, people who have kind of lapsed in engagement. They haven't opened an email recently, or they donated within the last 90 days. So they're super engaged. I have a thing to say to them.
Yep.
And I think from that point, if whoever is listening to this right now would say, oh, I know what to say to them, right? Like
Yeah.
I can picture that person. I know what to say to them. I think that for a lot of people is the gap, the
Yeah.
physical, technical ability to do that. I think for a lot of people is the limitation on how do you tell a concise and how do you start with a concise and clear story?
Yeah. I mean, the number of times when we're sort of talking, usually within the framework of a fundraising event, when we're talking about marketing the event or the program at the event, and I say, who's the audience?
It's hard to define sometimes.
There's usually some space and time and quiet around that. And that definitely shapes what the story is. And I love that idea of absolute clarity on the audience first, and then the story comes versus putting an arbitrary form on who you hope is out there.
Well, we were able to use this example to your point of the pixel builder and sort of the like, how do we really segment our audience utilizing this tool with an event that we were producing where we were able to identify, okay, who are we talking to that are the ticket buyers? Who are we talking to that have come as a guest of a ticket buyer before? Who are we talking to that are the volunteers at the event? And who were sponsors of the event? So that we weren't sending out just like mass communications over and over to everyone. We were really getting specific about, oh, the sponsor was getting one message and the volunteers were getting another message. Now, don't get me wrong. Occasionally there's like an announcement we want everyone to have. But it was, I think, for us, an ability to kind of like really do that thing we talk about in donor fundraising work is the audience segmentation. I want to get into some of the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
You've made some reference points though that I want to make sure that we kind of walk through both some definitions, but also like the how to's or like how to utilize. So first, let's just do a little speed round and talk to me a little bit about different like tools that we would use in our marketing plan and what role each of these things play in our outgoing story. So I think we have lots of ways we connect to audience. What is the role of our website in our digital marketing strategy?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I think for me, the kind of metaphor or the mental image that is most helpful for this is like as a marketer or as a person who's interested in growth, you have kind of data or signal collectors. And then on the other side, you have activations or executions on that data. And so when website is an interesting example that could that I think could be easily sort of confused about what role it plays, is that your website is more a data and a signal collector than it is an activator of or teller of some kind of story. What I mean by that is, so what we just described, people who are visiting my volunteer pages or their programs or in the context of an event, they've looked at this part of the schedule or this set of sponsors, whatever. Imagine if you didn't have that degree of differentiation in the website. It's just one page that describes the event or describes the nonprofit. You lose the texture of the signal that website is giving you, right? The ability to then differentiate, because then the only thing that you would say is, well, I got people who have come to my website. Obviously, it's kind of a gray area because very often after these kind of sort of activations of some of the data, which are, I think, some of the other stuff that we'll talk about, potentially email, advertising, your social media posts, whatever, you're kind of pushing them to certain parts of your website, that it might have a donation form, that might have a volunteer sign-up form or whatever. But I think when you're thinking about designing a website, the thing that you should be thinking about is, what is the shape of signal that this gives me, right? If somebody comes to my website, by being able to see behavior on the website as differentiated versus somebody else, that tells me something about this person versus another person.
Yep.
And so a website is one of your kind of data collectors, signal collectors. In the context of Feathr, that's also and other kind of marketing and technology tools, that's where you're sort of tracking the bulk of your tracking and information comes from is, hey, what literally, like, what are they clicking on? Where's their mouse hovering? What are they looking at, et cetera? And you want your website to be well designed, well differentiated, so that you can have meaningful signal. Again, I'll just say, like, if you mash everything together on one page, you're kind of robbing yourself downstream
Yeah.
of ability to
Yep.
be specific in that sense. So I'll say my answer that your website is your primary signal collector.
I love that. It's a
Yep.
great frame to be able to think about how we segment and divide our information on the website so
Yep.
that we can track the incoming.
Yep.
What about email?
Email is probably one that kind of rides this fine line of both, because email is the cheapest thing that you can do. Generally speaking, the most available intentional kind of activation of engagement that you as a marketer have, right? You can kind of force engagement by sending an email, in that some people will open it, some people will read it, and you get to do that on your schedule. And depending on the email that you are sending, right? Email is either generating signal and intent for you. So who's opening what, who's
Mm-hmm.
clicking what,
Yep.
is on its own, independent of any immediate action thereafter, a very, very valuable piece of
Yep.
data, right? That kind
Yeah.
of goes into this funnel, right? Kind of cascade of activity. And this is, I guess, another thing that I think we have to be honest about. It's sort of a weakness of nonprofits, is that, like, at most nonprofits, email is, it's my newsletter or it's just my fundraising ask,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Is this kind of like, I have this sort of singular unitary view
Right.
of what email does, versus recognizing the behavior, the actions, the outcomes that this email might influence might come months down the road.
Yeah.
But knowing who reads, who engages, who opens with sort of one set of email, one kind of email, is a very, very valuable piece of data. And again, why in Feathr, that idea of, like, again, you can ask Pixel, you could do it yourself. Hey, show me everybody who's opened an email about blank,
Yeah.
or clicked on an email about blank. And one of the things that Feathr can do for you is she will search through all of your email campaigns based on the title, based on the description, whatever, and be like, okay, you said, whether it's about volunteer opportunities or whatever might be relevant for you, and say, hey, here's a segment. I've kind of built this segment for you of people who have opened emails about this topic within the last 90 days or forever, whatever you want. And again, use that in that kind of cascade of relationship. You're moving somebody through a funnel of engaging with you. And then the other form of email, it's that activation. It's right. It's, I have the signal, I have what they looked at on the website, I have the other email they've opened, I have maybe what ad they clicked, I have maybe what, the other thing you said, social media, right? Where there's sort of social media reference, that email is that activation of that. And you should treat those in your mind very differently. Those are distinct steps and actions, your expectation of performance of those, right? And obviously in the content and the optimization of them is different.
Yeah.
I can give a quick example of a way we've utilized those two differently for a fundraising event. We were doing corporate sponsor outreach, and this particular organization had not had a corporate giving officer in the past, and they were just engaging a new staff member in developing their corporate giving program. And in that, as they prepared for their event, they had a list of like 70 prospects, but they didn't know any of them. They were all like past corporate sponsors, people that they had done business with, vendors, but they didn't know if they had any interest. And so they created an email campaign. Instead of emailing them each one by one through their email, like through Outlook or whatever, they utilized their tool to then be able to see who was reading, who was opening, who was clicking, that then that's where they spent their time. So they were able to actually just like understand how to build their program.
Yep.
What about social media? I often see the organization that throws their newsletter out also puts their newsletter on their website, on their social media, but we're doing different things with each tool. So what role does social media have in our digital marketing plan?
Yeah, again, so social media for me, in the mental model that I have of marketing, is two things. One, it's particularly organic social media is your cheapest, most efficient and effective way to gain new eyeballs,
Okay.
right? Because of the way that those sort of generally work is they are incentivized to show content that people are engaging with to new people because the social media platforms want to keep you on the hook for engaging with them. So it's your cheapest way that you're going to get brand new eyeballs. And it is in this language that I use of kind of like signal collector versus activation. Uh, it is, I think, principally a signal collector, right?
Okay.
If you're designing your social media strategy well, what you want your social media posting content to tell you is what people are engaging with, right? Uh, Putting your newsletter is fine, right? It's not, I would not say you're committing some sort of sin by putting your newsletter also out on social media, but like really what you want is some kind of call to action. You want some kind of statement. It's a statement of your mission, it's a statement of your vision, it's a statement of some step, it's a statement of your event, it's a whatever it is, and then have that lead to, again, some part of your website that is differentiable, distinguishable, measurable. So you can say, hey, my social media contributes to not just getting new people, but me being able to identify, hey, these are the people who came from social media or came from Facebook about these topics, right? Like everything that as I'm speaking, the little thing that's playing in the back of my head is what's the question that I'm framing my segment around?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sort of framing this segment around like, I want to be able to ask my data, hey, show me everybody who came from social media about like interested in my event, a social media topic about interest in my event, or a social media topic about interest in a volunteer opportunity. And I want to be able to distinguish or differentiate that so that I can do my follow-up action
Yeah.
in accordance with that. If the only thing that you're doing is you're putting your newsletter there, well, you can say like, who am I getting from social media? But
Right.
it's not 2012 anymore. That's
Right.
not that's not really like predictive in any way of any. Literally everyone's on social media.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't tell you anything that
Right.
somebody came to you. That used to mean something, right?
Right.
That used to
Yeah.
that
Right.
used to be a profile that you would build around, but now it's just, yeah, okay, they're a human being, means they came
Yeah.
to you from social media.
Well,
Yeah.
also when you say it's not 2012 anymore, social media is really different in that it used to be that anyone who followed you, liked you, saw your content. Now there's a very tiny, 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 like 0.1%
11
of your
people.
audience.
It's 11 people.
So how does then digital advertising play into that?
Advertising is very clearly on the kind of signal activation side. This is I think maybe one of the most to new customers, to new prospects, sort of as they sign with us, kind of understanding like what it is that advertising is doing. I think a lot of people kind of still have this, it's a digital version of a billboard. I'm putting out a message, I want people to see the message. And there are some applications of some digital ad campaigns and digital ad strategies for which that is sort of relevant or fine, but those are generally really expensive and tend to be really inefficient, right? If you're thinking about digital advertising as starting from a very, very wide net, to borrow your language, and you're kind of trying to capture some particular action or outcome, those tend to be really, really inefficient. What is super inefficient, what advertising is very, very good for, is like the second to last step of this sort of conversion
Yeah.
funnel of a person, right? To make this practical. In Feathr, you can run campaigns that are like, hey, I want to target people. This is actually a new feature as of, I think, yesterday.
Oh.
But attached to Pixel Plus campaigns, you can select, hey, I want to target people who have prior volunteering history or prior giving history to environmental causes, right? Even though you might not have ever interacted, like your brand might not have ever interacted with that group, you can target those. And there's some utility to doing that. But you kind of have to understand how that fits into your overall sort of marketing, advertising, and growth budget and plan and strategy and execution. The kind that is really efficient, really effective is, hey, there are, over the last, again, 90 days, 120 days, whatever, X number of people, let's say 1,000 people who started donating, who clicked the donate button, but did not, within 15 minutes, within whatever, finish the donation process,
Right.
right? That's the data collection. That's the signal. The advertising, I know who you are. I know the behavior that drove you to do that. So I'm going to hit you with a message. And again, depending on, and this is the beauty, the benefit of doing this in this way, if you know what form they started, right? Maybe it's a different ask. It was a kind of specific campaign that they started versus it was just your general donate button versus it was your whatever, like what the ask to them is. It might be associated with that specific campaign language. Like, I know there was a nonprofit that I was like clicking around on their account, and I saw a whole bunch of advertisements where they have a campaign called "Let's Do Something," and whatever it means something to them, and it's like motivating and whatever. And they had a landing page with a specific donation form attached to that ask, and the data are largely true. Your conversion rate on that form is like 3 to 6%. That's the entire range, which means that the entire rest of that, 97 to 93%, 94% didn't convert, but are highly, highly associated with a huge propensity to convert in the future. This is potentially outing myself as being a creep, but particularly in the early days of Feathr, one of my sort of like what I would find myself doing really naturally, because we can see the data about individual users and what they're doing, kind of how they're behaving. And so I would just kind of like almost like the Matrix, like read through the data as it was coming in. And you would see these examples that like, it's just incredible how it works. Somebody would come to a donation page or a volunteer sign up page or whatever. They'd click around, they'd spend some time there, and then they would very likely get distracted, start eating lunch, somebody taps them on the shoulder, whatever. They wouldn't finish the thing. Somebody would run an set of ad campaigns around that. And so you could see, because you can literally see, and Feathr shows this to you as a user. Somebody's on weather.com, they're on yahoo.com, they see this ad, they see this ad, they see this ad, and they see it 4 times within an hour. And then you'll see like a 2-minute gap between they saw the last ad and they donated. They came back to the website and they donated. They didn't even click the ad, right? This is a person who might have stalled on the volunteer page a week ago, right? It's been a week since they revisited your website. They saw the ad, they saw the ad, they saw the ad. 2 minutes later, they donated. Because it's the trigger for them. That's right. I did start doing that, right? I was kind of halfway through that process. So that's again, like, I don't know if you can tell, super obsession is like, it is activation of the data and signal that you have principally is what digital advertising should be, because it is expensive. It's expensive to be able to run those ads. I mean, there's other stuff we could talk about Feathr, hopefully helping nonprofits fund that kind of media spend through our fundraising platform and the rewards that you get from that. But yeah, that's my answer is your primary view of advertising should be shoring up these parts of your funnel, right? That kind of last mile, finish the donation, finish the sign up, finish the whatever it is.
Well, that's the cart abandonment right there.
Exactly
right.
right. Yes.
So that we immediately found ourselves when we started trying to integrate Feathr into fundraising event campaigns, running into a bunch of terms. So that we didn't know or that we weren't familiar with. And cart abandonment was one of them. Let's dive into some of the other ones.
Yep. What is a drip campaign?
So a drip campaign is kind of sort of what it sounds like, or it will once I explain it to you. But it's a kind of pre-planned set of marketing messaging. I think the easiest thing to think about is emails. It's a kind of planned cadence of emails to a group of people, one person. The most, I think, kind of relatable example for a lot of people is going to be this idea of like a new donor welcome series, or maybe volunteer sort of welcome series, meaning like somebody completes an action, almost certainly somebody completes an action. They've donated for the first time, they sign up to be a volunteer. Your drip campaign is 24 hours later, they'll get one email. 3 days later, they'll get another one. A month later, they'll get another one. The example that I referenced as kind of being like meaningful to me is, food bank. You have a giving day ask or whatever your sort of particular specific campaign that you would set up on a drip campaign specifically towards the people who donated on that form, on that kind of fundraising ask. And it's like, it's their entire year of the next 12 months of outreach to them, right? A month after that, they're going to get an email. 3 months after that, they're going to get an email. And I think I may be critical to kind of define here is this is per person timing that I'm talking about,
Right.
right? This is not like March 31st, everyone gets the one email.
Right.
It's
Right.
for each person, it's a month after, 3 months after,
Yep.
whatever.
That's great. Talk to us about what is retargeting.
Okay, retargeting. This is an interesting word. It is now like the archaic kind of grandparent in the digital marketing world, because just pure retargeting shouldn't be happening that much anymore, because there are now kind of more enhanced, more sophisticated versions of this. But the basics of retargeting is, I think, like what most people think about in terms of performance digital advertising or marketing, because you can retarget people with email also. But it's the kind of advertising, the kind of marketing that kind of follows you around specifically based on whatever some particular trigger. So there's a difference between third-party audience, like I said, you can target people who have a prior history of giving to environmental causes. That would not be retargeting because they haven't done something specific with you in order to kind of to be involved in that group. It's like you said, cart abandonment is a kind of a specific type of retargeting. It's somebody performed a particular action. I'm going to follow them around. I think you guys have said the shoes thing. We tend to use this as an example. You go to Amazon, you look at a pair of shoes, you don't buy it. Amazon bugs you 8 million times, right? Like, look at these shoes that you looked at. Do you want to relook at that? Hey, these are sitting in your cart. That set of activity is retargeting.
Great. What is geofencing?
Ooh, sounds like I'm talking about like national security technology here. Geofencing is the set of campaigns, the ability to target anyone based on their current or past physical location. In Feathr, we sort of distinguish it different campaigns. There's historical geofencing versus geofencing, because geofencing without the historical prefix means, for example, a bunch of people are going to be at an event. Let's say I'm a scumbag of a competitor for the fundraising elevator, and I know that Elevate is going to be on or for
March 3rd and 4th.
yes. And I'm like, hey, I want to target all of those people.
Yeah.
So a geofencing campaign is a campaign that lets you kind of circumscribe or define the geographic area that you want to target. And during whatever window of time you have that campaign set up, people who are on their phones, on their computers, whatever, within that area will see your particular message, again, kind of around the internet. So as they're browsing the internet, if it's a video, they might see it in stream on Instagram Reels, whatever. It depends on your particular type of creative.
Geofencing shows up for me a lot when I'm traveling, right? So if I'm like, I land in an airport and all of a sudden I start to see advertising and my social media feed starts to populate with things happening in that community.
Exactly right, yes.
And I think the event is the best use that I'm seeing nonprofits utilize this is we want to make sure, let's say, for example, they have I heard a case study of an organization that was working with you that was an LGBTQ organization, and they wanted to geofence Pride. So the Pride Festival is a giant festival where all kinds of people come and show up, but they wanted to target advertising to those folks. So that idea of like anyone who's in this geographic region now is going to get that media. It's a tool that's mind blowing to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think, what's interesting too with these pieces that we've been talking about is that I can hear some hands on hips about these pieces and using them within the frame of nonprofits. They're being used.
Right.
They're being used. They're being used on you. They're being used on me. At some point, if we don't start to close the gap, the gap's never going to close.
Well, and that's what you said, Alex, before the break, was that this is giving tools to nonprofits to behave more like for-profit entities or creating access to things. I'm curious, just from the perspective of organizations, when they do utilize this, when you see that they're like really leveraging all of these different geofencing, drip campaigns, retargeting campaigns, what becomes possible for them when they haven't been utilizing any of those before?
I'm going to answer super plainly.
Yeah.
More money, more fundraising, more growth. I'm gonna be myself in this answer. I'm gonna sort of represent my own kind of personal value and ethics, which is if you believe in your mission, if you believe in your community, if you believe in the people you're trying to help and the capacity that you have to help them, you owe them every single thing that you can do and every tool that you can utilize to continue to impact them more, to get more value for them, to get them more help, right? Like, I think we all as a nonprofit sector have to be more sober, more clear-eyed about the reality that, like, as we just said, as Kristen just said, I think Kristen just said, the these tools are being used, right?
Right.
This is the landscape of competition that you are in.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. It is still a pretty common reaction for Feathr to get to be like, ooh, this is icky. I don't like the way this sounds. And that I'm sure that person feels feels quite righteous in that perspective. But I think what they need to understand is like, you're just not going to get attention. You're just not going to be seen. You are not going to be heard because these are the tools that everybody is using to sell you a new watch or some Coca-Cola or to get you to watch the football game or whatever. And as you and I talked, and we kind of talked about potentially having this podcast, this sort of reality that we wanted to kind of make clear for people is if you are a marketer at Coca-Cola, Nike, Apple, whatever, you have all of the tools, you have all of the technology, you have all of the data. You wish you had a product as meaningful as what the nonprofit has, right?
Yeah.
That's their fundamental challenge that they show up every day for is like, man, it's just shoes or it's just sunglasses. Well, how do I make this sound important enough for people to pay attention? And then the other side, we have, I mean, in the most sort of stereotypical sense of the word, a product that more or less should sell itself, right? The idea of feeding people in your community, clothing people in your community, healthcare for people, et cetera. Resisting the responsibility that you have to leverage every single tool, every single piece of technology, every piece of data that is available to grow, to make mission more visible, more successful. You're not going to win, right? There's no universe where 5 years from now society gets together and it's like, now let's just stop doing all those things.
Right. Well, and that's why we wanted to have this episode today. We wanted to be able to really encourage folks to think about as we're evolving, truly evolving our funding sources, is digital media building trust, building audience, increasing revenue in your door? And so I think it has been a foreign concept a lot in the nonprofit sector, but I am seeing huge results when people utilize it. So We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to step into the fundraising elevator. But hopefully, we're inspiring a few folks to venture into the world of digital marketing. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.
Welcome back. We're here with Feathr CEO Alex Levental talking about digital marketing, and the embrace of it for 2026 for our nonprofit friends. So, Alex, we asked all of our guests to join us in the fundraising elevator where we're all headed up. What is one bit of wisdom you'd share with nonprofits right now to keep them heading up?
The thing that I will continue to try and activate in the nonprofit sector until I'm out of energy or breath in my lungs is appreciation of growth for the sake of growth. That what I want to convey is how I wake up every day, right? And Feathr is kind of 10 plus years into this cycle. And we've had pretty phenomenal growth. And I think by a lot of metrics for a lot of objective observers, what they would categorize as success. I'm still unhappy with it, but I think a lot of people would categorize as success. And I want to be clear that I want to win for the sake of winning, right? I every day I want Feathr to be bigger. I want Feathr to be more successful for its own sake. The process of then making the plan of how do we get Feathr 50% bigger this year, right, is what produces the actions, the activity, our kind of presence in the space, getting to meet people and organizations like you, getting to obviously then participate in conversations like this to further our mission, to help nonprofits grow and to help nonprofits raise more money and be more successful. But the origin of that effort comes from growth for the sake of growth. It's sort of arbitrary. I wake up and I'm like, I want Feathr to be 50% bigger 12 months from now. And way too often, my experience with nonprofit professionals is that their starting point is survival, right?
Yeah.
That the questions that they ask are not, how do I get 50% bigger? How do I feed twice as many people next year? How do I, whatever their mission is, it's, oh man, right, here's my budget. I have these expenses. How do I get to this number? How do I get to this ask? And I think that is the beginning, it's the origin of what become a lot of these stumbling points, sins, mistakes about convoluted stories, about kind of not appreciating the data that you have and the signal that you have. Because if you start from, hey, I want to feed twice as many people next year, what's that going to take? And then you start reverse engineering from that goal. Well, I gotta get in front of this many eyeballs, and to get in front of this many eyeballs, I need this many opportunities. I need this many at bats. I need to convert at this particular rate. I need to raise this much. Is, I think, the philosophical answer to like, how do you do this, right?
Right.
There's so many different frameworks of how do you build a persona for people and what's a good storytelling architecture. But the distinction between which organizations actually do it, I think, are the ones that start with, what's the goal? The goal is feed twice as many people next year as we did last year. I'll end on an example, a case study that was super meaningful. I mean, I think like one of the most rewarding kind of moments, days at Feathr, is one of our customers is Hawaii Food Bank. And we have a kind of practice where I think it's once every 3 months, once every couple of months, we invite one of our customers to our weekly company meeting. Every Monday
Awesome.
morning, we do a company meeting. And it's a combination of the representative from the nonprofit as well as their kind of Feathr rep, sort of tell the story of like, here's their campaigns, here's what we targeted, here's the performance, et cetera. And Hawaii Food Bank, which is an organization, hopefully they're listening, that I can't give enough credit to in this regard of targeting growth, right? Wanting to increase their impact and then letting all of the resultant activity and focus flow from that. Talked about how in Feathr in a year they had raised over $100,000 incremental, and that paid for 700,000 additional meals for them. Which, like, working at Feathr, right, and kind of being there on that call, super incredible moment to be like, man, this stuff like really matters, right?
Yeah.
It's incredibly helpful. But what he spoke about was that that organization had hired a new director of communications, and that director of communications actually had them read Fundable and Findable, and kind of appreciate and sort of immerse themselves in this notion that, like, we need to grow, we need to care about marketing and storytelling and being fundable, findable, investable, supportable. And their kind of results came as a result of that, right? Whereas I think a lot of people think like, oh, I'm somehow going to generate fundraising, going to generate momentum, going to generate growth, and then my kind of goals will come secondary to that.
Yeah. Well, I think for us, the thing that we had an aha moment about, and that I think was the game changer, is that as we enter this new time, organizations are getting the double squeeze that you just kind of referenced. The food bank was in the midst of, which is the need is growing, but the funds are reducing. And so in that double squeeze, I think if you're setting your objective to meet what the needs are, that automatically is a growth mindset. And is an abundance mindset, not the scarcity of like just survival. And so we have seen a lot of potential in Feathr. We would normally end this episode by asking you, how do people find Feathr? But we already had a conversation with Brian and Brittany, and they've put together a form for us that we're going to have on here so that they can automatically schedule a demo. But we just hope people start to think about, and maybe pick up Fundable and Findable. We'll link that as well. But start to think about that idea of your message matters, your stories matter. Getting your stories out into the world are going to be transformative opportunities for you. And we have found Feathr to be an incredible tool. We're so lucky to partner with you all and get to do this work. And Alex, thank you for joining us today to educate us. We're on a learning curve, and so we appreciate the time to have conversations with you today and learn from you.
I really appreciate it as well. I mean, I have actually phenomenally enjoyed this conversation, as I expected, and of course knew that I would. But yeah, it is. We think we got onto a couple of topics that are both kind of, I think, important to talk about, and also really interesting for me to talk about. So it's been a fun talk.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced by Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by John Collier. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Friends, before we leave you, we want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, please share it with a friend and leave a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Change. It doesn't happen on its own. It happens on purpose. Thanks to nonprofits that believe a brighter future is not just possible, but needed and deserved. And that connect people to causes and turn moments of generosity into movements. That's why Bloomerang is built for purpose, to raise the bar on what's possible and help every act of giving lead to more. Because when the bottom line is a better world, no goal is too lofty. Bloomerang, built for purpose.